I primarily was a California actor, euphemistically, glamorously called Hollywood. Indeed, there were the New York actors, the shows that came out of New York in the golden days of radio were primarily of a documentary sense, and very often a more literate sense, very often a more substantial sense. Chicago was primarily a soap opera production center, because the slaughterhouses in those days were in Chicago, where the soap was being manufactured of animal fats.
That's interesting.
That's exactly the reason for it. And the sponsors' wives, who decided upon the artistic merits of any artist, were in close proximity to the production. And Hollywood then, you see, when I began in 1935, just at that point, San Francisco was the big town on the coast. And up to that point, motion picture artists, motion picture performers were forbidden to appear on radio for fear they would lose their glamour. And since tickets cost 35 cents apiece to go to the motion pictures, there was a real problem until someone's nephew, I suppose, in one studio decided, let our actor, our movie star, step into your living room. And the phrase was born, and suddenly there became a vogue for motion picture actors. Now, the movie star was named and starred. He was the great glamorous attraction. And that's how Hollywood expanded into the glamour show. But those surrounding him were the workaday able actors who played part after part after part.
The man you just heard is Hans Conried, famous for both his dramatic and comedic portrayals on both radio and TV. By January of 1956, he'd been involved in radio for 2 decades. Here he is on the February 24th, 1956 episode of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
Guilty as charged.
That does it.
Dollar! Dollar! See me, Dollar? Come see me. I got some things to tell you now.
Who's this with you, Dollar?
Andy Cord with the insurance company.
Oh.
Now, look, I haven't got any deals to offer, Foley. You know that.
Yeah, I know. So I took a chance. It's a lousy 5 more years.
What about Arnold Bennett?
You're a little anxious. I want some information first.
They only gave us 10 minutes, Foley.
Where's Bennett now?
He's still in the hospital. He's going to be all right.
He's out and I'm in. There's a break.
Oh, come on, Foley. Let's have it if you have anything to say.
Can you get Bennett? Can you really get him?
I'll tell you frankly. We think we can get him with or without your help now. It doesn't make too much difference. Maybe it'll take longer without your help, but we'll get him. The fact that the court is going to convict you for having set fire to Bennett's office building is the lever we've needed. We can go after him now.
You want to help us, Foley?
I don't want to help you or your stinking insurance company, but I hate the idea of Bennett. Mr. Know-and-do-everything, running around eating good food and sleeping in his nice bed while I'm rotting away in prison. Sure, he hired me to fire his building. He paid me $2,500 to put the torch to that lousy building of his. He said he could throw all the blame on a guy named Tony Midas if it ever came up.
We want the facts, Foley. How'd he first contact you?
I got a friend who knows things, see? And my friend told me to contact him.
When?
A couple of days before the job.
Come on, Foley. Who's your friend?
I'm not going to tell you everything.
Did you talk to Bennett in person about firing the building?
I talked to him on the phone after my friend told me about him.
By early 1956, those still involved in dramatic radio had advanced the medium's production to a high art. Most radio drama still remaining was by then based in Hollywood, with much of the news programming based in New York.
You're listening to the Old Time Radio Show on 71K News Talk Radio. Now back to Denver's Old Time Radio history buff, John Dunning.
The entire run twice over there. We ran it 2 years. And as a result, an actor by the name of Bob Bailey became very well known in Denver. One of the things that we kept getting called about was, where is Bob Bailey, and is he still alive? What is he doing? And can we write to him? And I had no idea at that time where Bob Bailey was, but I was requested to send the series out to a station called KREX in Grand Junction, and I sent them out there, and they had them on the air for, I believe, the first time, at the first show we sent, and they got a call from a lady out there named Roberta Goodwin, who said Bob Bailey was her father. And that's how we found out where Bob Bailey is today and what he's doing. And I'm going to talk to Roberta Goodwin now, and we're going to talk about some of that and about some of the old days when they were producing yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
For Roberta Bailey-Goodwin, then a teenager, accompanying her father to weekly recordings was a family ritual, and she got a first-hand look at the artists plying their craft.
You'd first go in and everyone would sit around a huge table. The whole cast would sit around the table, have some donuts, have some coffee, and do a read-through. And then they'd do another read-through with a stopwatch, because they had to allow time for commercials, even back then. And then they'd do a walkthrough, and then they'd get ready to record it. Then I had to leave the room, go upstairs and get in the sound booth. And then I would sit in the sound booth where the sound, not the men who made the noise, but the men who recorded it, the engineers would sit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd watch the show up from the sound booth while they recorded it. Everybody sort of ate at the same restaurant, and it was the group mixed together. The one would work at one station. A lot of times, I have a couple of the old scripts here, and I see where old people like Virginia Gregg and Jack Crucian, they were on several shows. Most of them, as a matter of fact. People would just work the same show.
What can you tell me about Jack Johnstone? Now, he was involved, I don't know if he was involved in the first show back in 1949, but he certainly was more closely related to that series than anybody else.
Well, all the time I ever went down or being aware of the show, he was always there. The two scripts I have dated 55 and 57 both have his name down here as being producer-director. As long as Dad was there, he was there.
What do you remember about him and his directing methods?
Oh, he was marvelous to watch. He would sit behind a lectern on a high stool, and he would have the script in front. And sometimes he would remind me of a snake. He would weave back and forth on the stool, giving what they call cues. You would have to cue the music, cue a sound effect, cue the actor by rather pointing at them. And sometimes he'd be like an orchestra leader, and he would it was hypnotizing to watch him as he brought everyone together and worked everyone through. That's literally what he did. He was the director of the program. Like an orchestra leader, he orchestrated all these different individuals till they got the finished product. That, and he was a wonderful man.
Was he authoritarian?
Yes, yes.
In other words, when he told you to do something, you did it?
Yes, yes. When he said quiet, this was it, everybody knew that he meant it, yeah. And he was just had a wonderful personality.
How did he get along with your father?
Oh, got along very well. We'd dine at his house, and like I said, I went to school with his daughter, and we would, she'd spend the night at my house, I'd spend the night over at their house. Of course, to us, our fathers weren't any different than the plumber, the mechanic.
From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Dan Mapes, New York Police Department, Mr. Dollar.
Oh, hi.
I just went over your statement to the officers who went to the scene of the shooting. Pretty rough business.
Yeah. How's the girl?
She hasn't regained consciousness. We've got to get on with this, Dollar. There's some questions I want to ask you.
Sure. Glad to do what I can. Where can I meet you?
What's the matter with right here at headquarters?
Okay. Say in about an hour?
Make it a half an hour. I said I want to get on with the case. Room 212, Sergeant Daniel Mapes.
Okay, Sergeant. I'll be there.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to 4 State Insurance Company, Wilmington, Delaware. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Todd Matter, a burglary that occurred 6 months ago, but the murder try occurred only a few hours ago. Expense account item 6, $16.40, 1 telegram. From me to Chief Investigator Don Freed, 4 State Insurance. I explained events up to date and requested that Freed contact their New York office and employ counsel for me in the event the New York police chose to hold me as a material witness in the shooting of Gloria Tierney.
We aren't going to hold you. Why should we?
I don't know. Why should you?
Sit down. Take it easy.
Okay, thanks.
So, you're a freelance insurance investigator.
Yeah, that's right.
Working for 4 State out of Wilmington, huh?
That's right.
Okay. Suppose you give it to me.
Well, you Got it right in front of you there in that report. I told it to the investigating officers right after the shooting last night.
Now you tell it to me.
All right. I made an appointment to meet this girl. She called me about 12 o'clock midnight, and I went on over to her apartment. She wasn't around when I got there, so I waited and talked to her landlady. A few minutes later, I saw her coming across the street. I went over to meet her because she looked like she'd been hurt or something. I walked her back across the street. Somebody pulled up in a car just as we got to the curbing.
Says here, Black Caddy, 1955 Coupe de Ville.
Yeah, I didn't pay too much attention.
What was the license number?
Couldn't tell. It was blacked out.
Okay, go on.
There was a man in it. I didn't see his face. Didn't even notice him, really. He just started shooting. The girl was hit 3 times. I was trying to help her, and he got away.
Well, what else?
That's it.
Okay. Tell me why you were in here yesterday afternoon checking to see if this Gloria Tierney had a record.
I was about to contact her. I wanted to know if she'd ever been in trouble.
Now tell me what you're working on.
The Todd case.
Todd?
Yeah, burglary out in Long Island about 6-7 months ago. I had reason to believe the girl might be able to help me on it.
Because of what?
Because of her mink coat.
Well, I'm glad you answered that way, Dollar. The coat's in the lab now. They're looking it over. We found it listed in our stolen property files. So far, your story's okay, but believe me, it isn't over yet. Tell me more. We know about the coat. We want to know about the girl who was wearing it.
Sorry, I can't help you.
We didn't have her prints on file here, but we sent them off to Washington. She's still unconscious. She's in pretty bad shape. She can't talk. You can. What's her angle?
I don't know.
You don't know who shot her. You didn't get the license number. You just stood there and let it happen. All you were interested in was your mink coat.
Look,
Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I might be through trying to tell you anything, pal.
Don't get smarty pants with me, Dollar. I got myself a shooting to straighten out. I'll straighten it out any way I can. What else did she have from the Todd business?
You tell me.
Nothing. A small diamond ring on a little finger. It's not on the stolen property list. Tell me, Dollar, did your insurance company pay off this claim?
Yes, the whole thing. About $75,000.
$75,000?
That's right.
Well, at least you got the coat back. Even if it has got 3 bullet holes in it.
Maybe we'll get a line on the whole job.
If she regains consciousness. Meanwhile, you can sit here and tell me about your tip.
What?
Who put you on to Gloria Tierney?
No, I'm afraid I can't tell you that.
Why not?
Because I promised not to disclose any names.
Oh,
I can tell you this much, though. The man who told me about Gloria Tierney couldn't possibly have had anything to do with the Todd case. He was in prison when it happened.
Let's have his name so I can check it.
He's in Indiana now.
He's got a name in Indiana. What is it?
Sorry.
You going to sit there and tell me he gave you a name to start with and that's all you bought?
Yep.
Suppose I told you I don't believe anything. And then I think I'll hold you for a while until you forget about whatever deal you made with an ex-con.
Well, suppose I told you that a lawyer for my insurance company is on his way down here right now just to see that I get treated right. What's funny?
You insurance guys. You know what? You give me a pain. Right here.
The Todd Matter was written by E. Jack Neuman under the pen name of John Dawson.
What's the first radio show you did? Can you remember?
I think it was Suspense. William Spear was producing it at the time. I had written my story, which I thought a great deal of. I'd written it in short story form. I went over to CBS and asked to see Mr. Spear or whoever was in charge, and which was a brazen thing to do, but at any rate, I eventually got to his secretary, who insisted that I leave the thing with her, and I said, no, if you don't want it, I'll take it somewhere else. And she says, I never heard of anything like that or anyone like you, but hold on. Well, lucky enough, she took it in to Bill Spear, who came out in 15 minutes, introduced himself, and said, do you have any more like this? And I said, I've got 1 million. And he said to her, find this guy in office. And I was in business.
You also did Johnny Dollar. Do you have any recollections of that show? Now, that was pretty early, Johnny Dollar.
I tell you what, that's where I first met Edmund O'Brien. We became great friends. He was Johnny Dollar. Then there was another Johnny Dollar named John Lund. And then there was another one named Bob Bailey, and maybe there was another one after that. But through the years, it was funny, every time they got in the soup, I forget who produced it, Jack Johnstone, that's right.
Right.
And there was somebody else before him, maybe Norm MacDonald or somebody, but they would give me a ring. Because I knew the format so well, I could write it quickly and make it work. Lo and behold, I find out that I own more of Johnny Dollar than CBS does now. I own all the scripts I ever wrote for them. And we have discussed from time to time making a television series out of it. But that's all we've done is discuss it.
Gloria Tierney's landlady, Ethel Stromberg, was voiced by Vivi Janiss. The surname Stromberg has multiple origins. In Swedish, strom means river, while berg means mountain. In Germany, it's a habitational name from places like Rhineland and means flat mountain. Barbara Fuller was Gloria Tierney. Frank Gerstle played Dan Mapes. Marvin Miller, famed for both announcing and acting, also played a small role in the Todd Matter.
But anyhow, I was around a lot. I don't know the New York scene at all. But Chicago and the West Coast I covered pretty thoroughly, I guess. I started in 1931, right after my freshman year in college. Every year when I was a kid, I worked at the office of the fourth in size Metropolitan Daily in St. Louis, Missouri, the St. Louis Times. I did everything. One year I made no money at all because I had to go out and try to sell subscriptions door to door. That was terrible. But I ran the morgue one year. That was a good job, the newspaper morgue, you know. I ran the supply room. In fact, I reorganized their entire supply system. I was on the front desk taking want ads, you know, really doing the dirt jobs, but seeing the business of being in a newspaper from the ground up. I was a copy boy. This was what I did every summer when I went to high school. But when I got to college, by this time the Depression had hit, and the newspaper folded. In fact, it sold out to the number 3 newspaper in town. And there were a lot of professional full-time newspaper people looking for jobs, so I didn't have a prayer for vacation. It was always just about a 3-month job, just vacation time, or 4 months. So I had been a very eager fan of radio in those days, so I applied to my favorite station in town, thinking I might get a job as a relief announcer during the vacation periods, knowing that everybody got a vacation. They auditioned me with copy they provided and asked if I had thought seriously of accountancy or even ditch digging rather than radio. So grasping at a straw, I said, I also do other characters. Now, I had been fiddling around with voices and so forth in high school, did auditorium things where you did imitations of famous radio people like Amos and Andy behind a sheet on the stage, you know, so they couldn't tell how many voices you were doing. And they were pretty successful. So I told them I could do a one-man show. And they said, bring us a sample.
We went on like that a little while. Then I accompanied Sergeant Mapes to Gloria Tierney's apartment. A full crew of technicians were there, giving the premises a complete check. Mapes dispatched 2 sets of detectives to cover the neighborhood for possible witnesses to the shooting. Another pair began to cover the apartment house itself. I went with Mapes to talk to the manager, Mrs. Stromberg. She looked white and shaken.
You remember Mr. Dollar?
Yes. Hello, Mr. Dollar. How's poor Gloria?
Not very good, Mrs. Stromberg. She's still unconscious.
And we're still pretty much in the dark about all this, Mrs. Stromberg.
Where is she? What hospital? I'd like to go see her. Maybe there's something I can do.
Best thing you can do is try to help us find out who shot her.
She's at the police emergency hospital right now, Mrs. Stromberg. I'll have them phone you when she can see people.
Well, thank you. Oh, what an awful thing. Well, what's it all about? Why would anyone want to shoot Gloria?
We hope we can ask her that question. Right now, we're going to try to find out all we can, and maybe you can help us.
Well, I hope so. What can I tell you?
Where she worked, how she lived, what people she knew.
Oh, dear.
Yesterday, you told me you'd known her for a year.
Yes, ever since she moved in.
All right. Was she a nice girl?
Of course she was a nice girl. Quiet, minded her own business.
Where's she work at?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Gloria doesn't work as far as I know.
Who pays her rent?
She always gave me a check.
Who gave her a check?
Well, I really don't know.
Don't you know anything? What's the matter with you?
Well, I'm trying.
Mapes, why don't you go sit down?
All right, I'll sit down here.
Mrs. Stromberg, What can you tell us about her? Do you know where we can contact her family?
Think about it.
Well, I don't know. I know they live in California somewhere, but that's all I do know. She talked about them now and then.
Uh-huh. How about her friends here in town?
What about them?
Well, for instance, the man who drove the black Cadillac last night.
I never saw that car around here before.
Did she talk about her friends to you?
Why, no.
Well, she's a pretty girl, young. Boyfriends?
Oh, yes, she did talk about them now and then. Do you suppose one of them had something to do with this?
Mrs. Stromberg, some guy pulled up in a black caddy last night and pumped 3 slugs into her. She acted funny before that, according to you. Run out when she was supposed to meet Dollar here. Don't you know if any of her friends drove a car like that?
No.
You know this, but you don't know that. What kind of a friend were you?
What?
What kind of a friend were you? That girl's lying in a hospital right now. She's got a slug here, another one here, and here. They've operated twice. You weep and holler and stand around wringing your hands about her, but you won't open your mouth about helping us find who did it. Now, let's start with that car again. You've got the front apartment here. You can see the street from those 2 windows. Have you ever seen that black caddy here before?
Yes.
Well, why didn't you say so in the first place? Whose is it?
I don't know. I don't know his full name.
Well, what do you know about him?
His name is Bill something.
Bill something.
Yes?
That's a big help. What does he look like? Where does he work? What does he do?
I don't know. I really don't know. She never introduced me to him, but she talked about him. She'd say, Bill's coming by tonight, or Bill did this, or Bill did that, but she never mentioned his last name.
But he drove the caddy.
Yes.
Now, what does he look like?
I told you, she never introduced me.
I heard that part. But I know if someone young and fresh and pretty like Gloria Tierney lived across the hall from my wife would be at the window every time she heard the bell ring or heard a car drive up out front. She'd want to see who was buying her the candy and flowers, who was knocking on the door. Isn't that so, Mrs. Stromberg?
Yes. No. Yes.
Well, what do you mean? Now, look. For the 3rd time, what does this guy Bill look like?
Well, he's tall and very dark.
Tall? What does that mean? Tall like me? Tall like Dollar? Tall like what?
Like Mr. Dollar.
How old? How'd he dress? What kind of build?
Easy, Mapes.
Why don't you go through that offering me to sit down part now?
All right. I was wrong about you, Mapes. I admit it.
Well, maybe I was kind of wrong about you, Dollar. Hardly anybody ever admits anything these days. Okay. I'm sorry I'm raising my voice, Mrs. Stromberg. But tell us about the man. All you can remember about Bill.
Heavy? Light?
A husky fella, and he dressed very nicely, too.
What color was his hair?
Dark, I think. He always wore a hat.
How about his eyes?
I don't know.
Uh-huh. About how old would you say?
Oh, 30, maybe 35. I'm not very good at ages.
How often did he come here to see her?
Oh, once or twice a week.
Gloria's been going with him?
Yes.
Did she ever mention where he works or what he does?
No, she never mentioned that.
Do you have any idea how long she's known him? How long she's been going with him?
Well, I have no idea. I just know he's been coming to see her ever since she moved in here.
This, Bill. Would you say he had money, Mrs. Stromberg?
Yes, I'd say so. He drove that big, expensive car and always dressed so nice. And, of course, he gave Gloria that coat.
The mink coat?
Yes.
Oh. Do you know if he ever gave her any jewelry?
I don't know. I don't think so. Gloria'd usually run across the hall and show me when he gave her something. Mostly they were small gifts, candy, and things like that, but I don't remember if he ever gave her any jewelry.
Did he ever bring any friends here?
I don't know.
All right. Was Gloria going to marry him?
Oh, she never talked about it.
You sure about that?
Yes, she never said, and I never asked.
Why? Why not?
Well, I don't know. I never asked her. I wanted to, but I never asked her. You think right away I've been a busybody watching that girl and so on. Well, yes, I watched her from time to time, and I was her friend here. But there are some things we just didn't talk about.
There sure were.
Well, as you ask me questions, I realize how much we didn't talk about. I can't tell you where she came from or where her family is or who Bill is or what she planned for the future. I just know she was a nice, decent, honest sort of a girl.
Yes, we got that impression, Mrs. Stromberg. Anything you want to ask, Dollar?
No.
My apologies again for raising my voice. Thank you for the information, Mrs. Stromberg. Come on, Dollar.
Okay. Goodbye.
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 Well, you got it out of her.
Yeah. But I don't trust her. Took too much work.
Are you really as tough as you look?
Sure.
You're a good cop, Mapes.
Thanks. I like to have somebody mention that every 5 years. Well, better get out this guy's description.
Yeah. There's a hall phone right there.
Uh-huh. Well, we sure haven't got much to go on. Communications, please. Yes, Dan Mapes. I want an APB out on... What? Oh, I'll give it to you later. Johnny, the hospital phoned in 2 minutes ago.
Gloria.
Yes. They think she's dying.
There'll be another intriguing episode in our story of the Todd Matter tomorrow.
Tomorrow, I take some lessons from a good policeman on how to find out what has to be found out. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by John Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure and join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
And because television was obviously going to move in big and supplant radio drama as we knew it. But in that year and that time, and particularly with on stage, radio really grew up and put on long pants. It became very adult and very sophisticated and very satisfying. Drama without information is dull, and information without drama is dull. I like to provoke an audience. I like to make them think, if I can. I like to think a little myself. I hate to be cliche.